Hi guys, it's Michelle, and today's video is going to be a true crime cases that happened on Christmas video. You would be surprised with how much true crime there is mixed with the holiday season. It is really insane and very, very scary at, a time that is supposed to be super happy. It's really sad that so many terrible things occur during this time. But without further ado, let's get into the true crime cases. I hope you guys had a happy and safe holidays, whatever you celebrate, but let's get into the cases. The first case that I want to talk about happened in Jacksonville, Florida. 67-year-old woman named Michelle Odow let her 37-year-old friend Patty White stay with her in 2011. Patty was having some money troubles and she needed somewhere to stay, so Michelle opened up her home to her. Patty had actually dated one of Michelle's nephews in the past, and the two of them remained very close family friends. Patty would even babysit Michelle's young nieces and nephews. They were a very close intertwined family even after Patty and Michelle's nephew broke up. Michelle O'Dowd was said to be someone who wanted to always help people. She was always taking care of everyone else and putting everyone before herself. She had a son of her own who tragically passed away when he was only 29 years old. She was very close to all of her nieces and nephews and also very close to her twin brother Phil. Her whole family called her Aunt Mickey, and she basically just treated everyone super generously and seemed like a super sweet lady. After about a month of Patty living with Michelle and Patty got into some sort of disagreement where Michelle actually ended up asking Patty to leave. Those close to Michelle believe that Patty would have had to do something pretty terrible for Michelle to even ask her to leave because, like I said, she was just such a generous person. It didn't seem like it was anywhere in her roster to just kick someone out of cold blood, Especially considering that while Patty was living with Michelle, she treated Patty like she was family. She opened up her home for a whole month. She trusted Patty with her debit cards and PIN numbers, let her go get groceries for the two of them, and honestly a lot more. She was very generous towards Patty. Because Patty was struggling with money, Michelle even offered her different odd jobs so that she could make a little extra cash, and just really wanted to help out this family friend, just out of the goodness of her heart. So it was pretty shocking when Patty was asked to move out. So Michelle actually worked for her twin brother's company, and on December 2nd of 2011, Michelle did not show up to work that day. Of course, her twin brother is someone who probably knows her better than anyone else, and he felt like there was something wrong. He wanted to go check on her. So Phil pulled up to Michelle's home in her gated community, the Grand Reserve on Sutton Park Drive. The door to Michelle's home was open, and it looked like the house had been completely ransacked. Chairs and tables were turned upside down. An empty bottle of vodka just lying on the floor, which was apparently super out of character for Michelle. What was strange and one of the first things that Phil noticed was that Michelle's car was still there, and also Michelle's dog was still there. He had not ran away. This is when Phil started to panic, and he began to search throughout the house, calling Michelle's name. As he was looking around, he saw a foot popping out under the Christmas tree. When he grabbed the foot, it was ice cold, and under a bunch of presents that were for Michelle's nieces and nephews was her body. Bill, of course, called the police right away, and it was determined that Michelle had died of a blunt force trauma and strangulation. Police also tracked down Michelle's debit cards once they realized that they were stolen. They found surveillance video of Patty White at various different ATMs across the state of Florida, taking out money of Michelle's account. It was then discovered that when Michelle kicked Patty out, she moved in with her family that she had in South Carolina, and she returned to Jacksonville in early December to rob Michelle. It's believed that Patty had set up the murder in a specific way to make it look like a botched robbery so that she wouldn't get caught for it. Of course, there are many people who also believe that Patty ended up going there to rob Michelle and murder her. That was always a part of her plan. The police ended up tracking Patty down in South Carolina. They were following her mom's car, and as soon as they got on the freeway, they pulled her over. Now she is in jail for the murder of Michelle O'Dowd, and it is just so sad that Michelle's family lost such a great woman and seemed like she was so caring around the holiday season, and it's just so sickening that this psychopath would literally bury her friend's body, who was so open and nice to you, under Christmas presents that are for that victim's family. That is the most absurd thing. I don't even know how you look at a Christmas tree the same after that. That is just horrendous. I feel like this is one of the most terrifying cases that I've ever seen happen around the holiday season, and it is just heartbreaking and really, really scary and just sadistic. Like, so insane. Next true crime case we're going to be talking about happened in a neighborhood in Edinburgh, Scotland on Christmas Day of 2013. 47-year-old apartment block resident Alan Williamson heard a loud bang on his front door. He was hesitant to open it at first because he had a considerable amount of trouble with one of the neighbors, Melissa Young, over the past 6 months, who just has been stirring up various different issues between the two of them. But he decided to open the door anyway, and waiting for him was an enraged Melissa Young with a 6-inch kitchen knife. Melissa stabbed Alan 29 times to death. Other residents of the complex heard a commotion coming from Alan's apartment, so they of course called 911. When they arrived, they found Alan Williamson murdered in his apartment, and there was like a trail of blood leading to a different apartment, and when they opened the door, they found Melissa Young covered in blood and just frenzied, like freaking out, panicking. The officers asked her if she had just stabbed her neighbor, and she said, quote, "The power it gave me was amazing." Of course, Melissa was arrested and taken into the police for questioning. Not only did she confess to murdering Alan, but she essentially blamed the attack on him and said that the reason that she did it was because she gave him a Christmas present that he didn't like. She went on to explain that she basically got Alan a pair of sneakers, and Alan was kind of like, not really sure about this colors. Like, I feel like they're pretty feminine, like maybe you should keep them. Melissa insisted that the colors were unisex, and Alan just kept insisting that Melissa keep the sneakers instead of him. The rejection apparently simmered in Melissa for days, till boiling over on Christmas Day when she brutally murdered him in his own home. A toxicology report revealed that in the immediate aftermath of her arrest, Melissa had a trace of 4 different types of illegal drugs in her system. During her trial, a doctor told the courtroom that Melissa was an alcoholic and had inhaled solvents daily, was on 14 different prescription medications, and had even smoked heroin before murdering Alan Williamson that day. Something that I feel like is so horrific about this story is that it came out that Melissa was actually completely harassing Alan for 6 months leading up to his death. Sometime in July in 2013, she actually abducted and assaulted him, stemmed from a false belief that he had stolen her house keys. Melissa held Alan at knife point. The way that he was finally able to escape was when Melissa turned her back for a second and he jumped off of the first floor balcony. At the end of Melissa's trial, she claimed that she was possessed by a demon, but ultimately the court ruled her guilty and she was sentenced to serve at least 20 years before being eligible for parole. Not sure why she didn't get life. I just think that this story is so crazy and so messed up. Like, it's so sad to me that he was still willing to talk to this woman, even though she had treated him so poorly. It's just so horrific that she ended up murdering him on Christmas Day, no less, and it's just heartbreaking. Next case that we're going to be talking about is the Santa killer. On December 24th of 2008, in the city of Covina, a suburb of Los Angeles, California, a man named Bruce Jeffrey Pardo dressed up in a Santa suit, and at around 11:30 p.m., he knocked on his former in-laws' house, who were throwing a Christmas party, like with their close families and friends. He did not pull up to this Christmas party with any good intentions. He actually brought a gift-wrapped package that contained a homemade flamethrower, and he also brought 2 semi-automatic handguns with him. Goes up to the door, rings the doorbell, and just a second after the door opens, takes out 2 handguns and immediately shoots his 8-year-old niece. And what's so sad is she was running to greet him. He just shot her in the face, then fired gunshots at several different party goers, and after he shot people, he used the flamethrower to completely set the house on fire. He took the lives of 9 people that night, including his ex-wife, his mother-in-law, his father-in-law, 3 of his sisters-in-laws, and 2 of his brothers-in-laws, and his nephew. 3 other people that were in the house were wounded from the gunshots, and one of them even jumped from the 2nd story to escape the fire. After the attack, Bruce Pardo put on his regular clothes, drove his Dodge rental car to his brother's house in Silmer, California, about 30 miles away from the crime scene. He was later found dead with a self-inflicted gunshot wound in his brother's home. However, his brother was not home at the time of his death. It was initially believed that Bruce planned to flee to Canada by plane since he had bought himself a ticket to fly on Air Canada. However, the flight itinerary was actually from LA to Illinois with a layover in Minnesota. Bruce called one of his high school friends days before the attack and said that he was planning on visiting him, but investigators Investigators now think that maybe he wasn't actually intending on visiting anyone, that he bought the plane ticket to distract the investigators. Some people think it's even a possibility that Bruce had unexpectedly gotten third-degree burns on his arms from the fire, so he decided to go against his initial plan and take his own life. The police ended up finding $17,000 of cash on him, and his rental car that was found just around the corner from his brother's house was actually rigged. Like, it had the Santa suit in it, and he had poured explosive gunpowder all over the Santa suit so that if it were removed, whoever was removing it would explode, and like essentially it would just set off a bomb in the car. They also discovered basically a virtual bomb factory in Bruce's home. Like, he was very experienced with knowing how to make bombs, which is just freaking scary when you think about it. Police suspect that Bruce Pardo's crime was due to marital problems. Bruce's wife of 1 year had settled for divorce in the week prior. He was also an electrical engineer, which is probably like where he learned how to make bombs, at least somewhat. But he had been fired from that job in July, so many people think that that could have been a possibility or like a factor as well. Some sort of motive as to why he would do this. It is just very, very scary and so sad and terrifying. I can't even imagine the people who survived that party. The trauma that they have to go through every day is like probably just the most horrendous thing ever. But the next true crime case we're going to be talking about are the Lawson family murders. A man named Charles Lawson and his wife Fanny lived in Germantown, North Carolina, with their children Arthur, Mary, Mary Lou, James, Maybelle, Raymond, and Carrie. Lawson family worked as tobacco farmers, and they finally saved enough money in 1927 to buy their own farm on Brook Cove Road. In 1929, just days before Christmas, Charles took his wife and his children into town to buy new clothes to take a family portrait for the holidays. This may seem like a pretty basic thing, but apparently in the 1920s this was like a very much a luxury, and it was super strange to have someone of the working class be able to like go take these like extravagant family portraits at the time. Nonetheless, no one would have expected what Charles did next. On the afternoon of Christmas Day of 1929, Charles Lawson shot and killed his daughters Carrie and Maybelle, and then his wife Fanny. His other children inside, Marie, James, and Raymond, attempted to find a hiding place, but he ended up killing them as well. And lastly, he killed his baby, Mary Lou, which it was thought that Mary Lou was bludgeoned to death, which is just so horrific. After the murders, Charles went to a nearby woods and shot himself. The sole survivor of this brutal murder was their eldest son, 19-year-old Arthur Lawson, whom Charles had actually sent out on an errand before all of this went down. Bodies of the family members were found with their arms crossed and rocks under their head. And the gunshot that was signaling Charles' suicide was actually heard by many people who already knew of the murders. They had all gathered to the property after finding this out and were like, "Where's Charles? He's missing." And then they heard the gunshot of him committing suicide. A police officer who was with Arthur at the time ran down to discover Charles's body along with letters to his parents, and they also found footprints that were encircled in the snow around a tree, and it was kind of assumed that Charles had been pacing there prior to taking his own life, like just deciding if he should do it or whatever. And that is just sick, but there are many theories as to why Charles did this. Obviously, we'll never really know the full reason, but there's a couple theories that make a lot of sense. The first one is apparently months before the murders, Charles had sustained a head injury, and some family members and friends had theorized that it altered his mental state, and that was related to the massacre. However, an autopsy and analysis of his brain was performed at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and it found no abnormalities in his brain. So a lot of people don't really believe that theory. There is a very disturbing theory that makes a lot of sense that I think most people believe to be true. There were quite a few rumors that Charles was actually abusing his daughter Marie. Stella Lawson, a family member, had overheard Fanny discussing how she was concerned about a quote incestuous relationship between Marie and Charles. A close friend of Marie Lawson's, Ella May, came forward and disclosed that a few weeks before Christmas of 1929, Marie had confided in her that she was pregnant by her own father and that both Fanny and her father knew. And many people believe that that is what led him to killing his entire family because he didn't want the secret to get out, which is just so disturbing in so many ways. I feel like anything, the fact that it happens over like a holiday, regardless of what it is, always just makes it so much worse because then that family member has to like think about it on a day every year, and it's just horrendous. But that is it for today's video. If you guys liked it, please give it a big thumbs up. Let me know in the comments below if you have any true crime cases that you want me to talk about. Hope you guys had a very happy holiday season. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and subscribe for new videos every single week, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.